Hi, everyone. Welcome to our table talk. We're back with Pastor Jon.
Hey, everyone.
We've had an amazing celebration through Easter. And now we're going to dig into the gospel through the book of Ruth.
Yes.
And it's a story that doesn't start off so well.
No, and actually, it's a story that's not okay for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's a really good book because, like I said, it deals with everything from romance to marriage to race to the gospel to Jesus. Like, it sort of covers like the whole gamut of emotions. Really important.
Right. So there's all that stuff, and in the midst of it, we need to learn about God's providence.
Yeah, I think that's an old word that I don't remember the last time I've heard it, actually. And again, if you weren't able to listen, providence means God's sovereignty, so his kingship of all things being enacted in a moment. So God is involved on a cosmic level, God's involved in a historic level, God's involved in our personal lives. And that's what providence is called. And this whole story is actually providence on all three levels.
Right, right. And so we begin going into the story. We find Naomi and her family, and it's an awkward time.
Yeah,
it's a difficult time.
Brutal. Famine. They're living during the time of the judges, which means there's multiple invasions. God's people are not following him. We don't know if the famine is caused because of invasion, because just of life, or because of God's hand of judgment. What we do know is they leave to Moab, and that's difficult too, because the Moabites actually for 18 years during the time of Judges had enslaved the Jewish people, and also they worshipped a pretty violent God, and they're like cousins to the Jewish people, but they hate them. So the decision to become like an immigrant, to go to a place like that, shows the level of desperation.
Right, right. It was bad.
Bad.
And it was in an atmosphere of rebellion on the part of God's people.
Yeah, well, Elimelech, who's the husband, his name means God is king. And Naomi's name means delight, pleasant, and rejoicing, or a version of that. And like the whole story is the opposite of both of their names. And so it's just a really brutal time. And it would be really hard to see God's hand during a famine, or having to become an immigrant, or going to work for enemies, or leaving the safety of your house and your inheritance. I mean, one thing I didn't even bring up, by leaving, inheritance was passed down generationally through the men's name, but it's land. They're literally leaving their inheritance behind because it's that bad.
And so they get down into Moab, and
Husband dies. The boys get married to Moabite women, which is sort of allowed, and then they die, and then like it's done. There's nothing left.
Right.
Famine 2.0.
Right. So it's just this terrible situation, and that's where we come back to providence.
Yeah, so it says that God suddenly started providing food.
Right.
So they make the decision to go back, and again, the beginning of the book is basically reminding us that all good gifts come from the Lord. And I think I said this in the sermon, like, when Naomi heard there's food, she didn't go, oh, an invasion stopped, though that might be true, or the famine stopped, or she said, God has done this, because she understood, unlike so many of us, that all good gifts indirectly or directly are from the Lord. Health, breath, food, water, sunshine, like all things find their roots in God. Not that he is those things, but he gives those things. So Ruth is forcing us to almost remove a secular or selfish veil of reality.
Right.
I'm not the center of the universe.
Right.
And I'm also not really in charge. Like, yes, there's a good chance today I will go and buy bread at a bakery. We're actually out. And yes, I'm buying that, and I've worked for that. But who gave me the ability to work? And who invented the wheat and this is God-centric. So the whole story of Ruth is trying to get us back to the place where we see God is the provider of all things. And do we even as Christians acknowledge that? Very rarely. We say the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. We don't mean it. Because I'm going to Loblaws, but actually. So there's that component to it, but the deeper thing is, if God could provide food to rebellious people, could God show up and do a miracle in Naomi's life to provide a grandchild? And if that's true, could that change everything? That's the beginning of the conversation.
Right. Out of this despair, is some good going to come?
Yes. Can ashes turn to beauty, or is that just a great thing you put on Instagram, but isn't true?
Right. And so she's going to begin coming back with her 2 daughters-in-law, and we're left with these tantalizing questions of what's going to happen. Is God going to come through, or is the story going to change?
Right.
So you leave us then challenging us to consider our own lives.
Yeah, I think even in Connect groups as they're meeting, it sounds very corny and Christian, but it's true. Do you actually believe God's involved in the world, or do you not? Do you live like he's involved, or do you just say he is, but you don't see it? Like, it'd be interesting to go around the group and go, where do you see God's hand in the world right now? Where do you see God's hand in our nation right now? Where do you see God's hand in this church right now? And in the last 6 months, can anyone say they saw the hand of God in their life? And it's not profound all the time. It's not always Gabriel showed up and, but like any sign. Now, if you say no, that's actually okay, because that's part of the story. There are periods of silence that we don't see, but that doesn't mean God is not working. Like Naomi had no clue that Ruth was going to have a child, and she'd become the great-great-grand, mother of David, who would produce Like, she couldn't see that, but God did that. So just to talk about that, where do you see the small, almost nothing work of God in the big things? Like, talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you might see reality as it truly is.
Right. And there's a lot in this world we could worry about.
Oh, yeah.
But Ruth is teaching us that we don't need to worry about those things.
Yeah, like there's a difference between fear and fear. It's not wrong to be anxious in the sense of like it's not wrong if a bear is running at me to go, I should be afraid and run away. There are reasons why we are rightfully afraid of things, but to be consumed by fear, to be like drowning in it, well, like maybe one of the questions for the group is, do you actually think God's stewarding history or not? Like, do you actually think he's actually moving it? Or do you just think it's tumbling depending on who gets elected and what tariff happens next and who's going to be elected our prime minister this coming week? Like, do you think it's just like all up to chance, or actually through all the darkness and good, God's working this out towards the end? That reorientation is where hope is found.
Right. So we get to dig into Ruth.
Yes.
And let's be praying, God, help me to understand your sovereignty, your providence.
And your good news.
And your good news.
Yes.
Okay. Lots to discuss in your groups. God bless.